founder and chairman of Emeco Travel, and we're proud to have him amongst the 50 Egyptians participating in amending the Egyptian constitution. Pleasure to have you. Dr. Farouk Nasser, chairman and managing director of MENA Tours, also into the investment business, investment banking, and he was very keen on taking part in this session, tourism, not in the investment session, because he has a lot of messages to convey. A pleasure to have you. Mr. Karim Hilal, who's known as the ambassador of investment, or investment ambassador. Pleasure to have you, Mr. Karim. He's with us here to talk through his advisory hat to the Minister of Tourism, or to the Ministry of Tourism, and our host, Mr. Richard Zeola, the General Manager of the Cairo Marriott Hotel. And he's been here for 4 years. I guess they were 4 very exciting years for you. You've seen the transition from the beginning until the present stage. Pleasure to have all of you here. What we'll do is we'll have a 10 minutes for each speaker, or even shorter than that, so as to give the floor to the audience to ask as many questions as possible. And we'll start off with Mr. Karim Hilal. What I've noticed in the first session, the Minister of Tourism said that you are preparing a study for the Ministry of Investment, for the Ministry of Tourism. I'm sorry. I think it would be newsworthy for us to know the highlights of this study and what you aim to come out with from the study in terms of the tourism industry, because what we've seen is that what's happening in the government is a crisis management mode. We are trying to solve the situation, the problems at hand, and there must be somebody in the government or some people in the government that are looking long term. Is your study tackling the crisis or tackling the long-term fruitfulness or the long-term growth of the industry?
Okay, thank you, Ayman. Well, there's no need to elaborate on what does the tourism sector mean for Egypt in terms of GDP, employment, all the rest of it. But specifically in response to your question, one of the main structural issues with the sector, from my point of view, is the financial structure. Simply put, the imbalance between debt and equity. Now, in normal times, and you have to say that tourism has not had a long sustainable period of normal times, but in normal times, the initial calculations or projections that were part of the initial studies for most of the projects was sound. However, its assumption in terms of price kept being pushed back every time we have a crisis. So therefore the numbers went ballistic, as they say. So what used to happen over the last 15, 20 years, whenever we have a crisis, prices drop, therefore cash flow drop, and at the same time you have your debt obligations to the bank, interest and principal. We do live in a high interest rate environment, exceptionally so. So the solution has always been, let us reschedule. And if you talk to any of the banks, they will tell you one of the highest rates in terms of frequency of rescheduling has been the tourism portfolio. They just keep on rescheduling. Now, rescheduling is one of your quick fixes. However, it does two things. One, it actually compounds the problem, because all you're doing is you're accumulating an obligation that you're unable to pay now by making it more, substantially more, in the hope that at some point in the future you'll be able to pay it. Now, given the nature of the industry, we keep getting hit every few years. So the price levels do not sustain anywhere near the cash flow required to pay off these obligations, let alone produce a return to the shareholders. So my approach was very simple. There is an imbalance. Rescheduling is not the answer. What you need is reduce the debt burden by increasing the equity. Very simple. Okay, how do you do that? When you have a huge sector with over 200 billion pounds of investments in the assets. So the idea of creating a fund along the lines of a private equity fund, i.e. it is not a charity, it is not subsidy, it is a fund that is created to seize opportunities and produce a return. But the idea of the fund is very simple. We are hoping to raise as much as $5 billion. And the investment policy, which is being prepared now as part of my assignment, if you will, calls for this fund to invest into the equity of existing projects. The priority is existing operating projects that are having financial difficulties, or rather cash flow difficulties. And the investment would be in the form of direct equity or possibly convertible, and the proceeds of any such investments are only going towards reducing the debt burden. In other words, the fund will not buy out the shareholder. It will put money into the company by increasing the capital to reduce the debt. The second priority would be projects that are near completion but are now short of funds. Now, one thing to highlight here, this is designed to produce a return to the investors. Therefore, it is not a bailout situation for any project that is not economically sustainable. It has to be viable projects. They do need a bit of financial engineering, a bit of equity injection, and then they will be back on track, producing a profit. So that is, in general, the idea that we're trying to do, because, like I said earlier, this sector is the most promising, is the one that has the most growth potential by far, and it is one that has the most immediate impact on employment and foreign receipts on GDP. So this is, in brief, the idea that we're trying to put together now.
Well, since we still have time for your discourse, let me ask you just before moving forward, wouldn't this be considered a high-risk investment, if you will, in such a fund?
I think the question that supersedes that is, do you believe in Egypt?
Well, definitely. But the industry itself is considered financially high risk.
No, the industry is not high risk, but the industry is exceptionally sensitive to political unrest, to security issues.
That's why I'm saying high risk.
Which is, we have to take the view, if you do not think that what we're going through now is a transition, is a temporary state of affairs, getting our house in order, if you think this is going to be the state of affairs from here onwards, then yes, you will think this is high risk.
If your mandate is such an investment, the investment plan, if you will, are there others talking about preparing some sort of stimulus for the industry?
I think the minister alluded to that early in the morning, incentives and stimuluses and so on, and I think Ilhami will able to elaborate more on that. But from my perspective, I'm looking at a structural, sustainable solution to a structural problem in the financial setup of the sector.
All right. Let me take it from there to Mr. Ilhami. And I have a number of issues, actually, that I want to address with you. If we take from Karim and talk about what the industry needs, because definitely the industry does not need a subsidy. Maybe it needs what it's in dire need of is a stimulus in order to provide for long-term sustainability and growth. This is one part, the stimulus part. What does the industry need to grow? The other thing which always comes to my mind when I'm talking to people from the industry, and they're talking about the tour operators and the control of the tour operators for the Egyptian market. The tour operator can open the tap and the tour operator can close the tap. Where's the role of the people in the industry in order to create a marketing vehicle to stand, I won't say in face of the tour operators, but stand as a promoter for the Egyptian market, which can increase the tourism demand? Let's start with these issues first.
Okay, before I forget, so answer one by one. First, I would like to say that Karim is the consultant of the Tourism Federation, because the tourism minister has a salary at the end of the month. Sometimes we don't. So he's our consultant. Yeah? Okay. So in this respect, the government still finds money. We need money. And that's the problem, seriously. And this is where Karim has been very helpful, because he came up with this idea, which we discussed with the central bank, with the Minister of Tourism, and now we have a meeting with the economic group of the ministries, the 4 or 5 of them, headed by Dr. Ziad, to discuss the issue and the concept of Karim with the governor of the central bank, as with the chairman of the Egyptian Bank Federation. So this is on this side. Is this the only thing required? Of course not. We had a meeting, Karim was present with me, with the central bank, and we asked for a reduction in the interest rate. The interest rate in Egypt are absolutely horrendous. So they were reduced by 0.5%, but this is not the end. And still the bank charges, each bank charges a different rate. Depends on the customer. So if it's a public sector, they will pay much, much less. We pay 3 to 6% higher than the public sector, which is a lot of money. But right now, we need absolutely a stimulus. I don't want to give a very sour picture, but it is, in fact, indeed, we are going through a serious problem. What Karim mentioned is a medium-term problem that he's trying to solve in a very clever way. But he also is helping us drafting a paper, which he did very well, which we presented to the Minister of Tourism, to be presented to the others. What are our immediate cash requirements? Because we need cash. The travel agents don't pay the hotels. The hotels cannot pay the salaries. Everybody is at a standstill. Nobody can pay the banks. It's a problem. We have a cash problem. If you go to the bank, say, I want additional cash, they say we cannot. So I asked the minister, I said, if you want the industry to continue, there is no other way except now give it a subsidy without repayment. It's the least the government can do to the tourism industry. After the many years, they made a lot of profit out of our industry. And we are not less than any other industry. We need it because we have a very serious problem. It's the employees. We lost 1/3 of our employees. And to find back new employees to replace them is impossible task.
You're talking about trained employees.
Travel, hotel.
Trained.
Yes,
Trained.
yes. Why? Because it takes 5 to 10 years to train someone on a very low level. But until he makes no mistakes, until he makes no mistakes in invoicing, whatever, it takes a long time. Now, as you know, the level of graduates is lower than before. So before it took 5 to 10 years, now I think it will take a bit longer. So it's a problem. We have to safeguard the 2/3 left of the employees, all of us, and for this we have to find a way out. On the other issue that you mentioned about the wholesaler or the tour operator, we have to understand that it's good in a sense, the tour operator, the big ones, and it's detrimental to the economy in another sense. So you have to use it both ways. Why? Good, because they produce large number of people. They can afford to take risks on charter, which is the name of the game now, is mass tourism, no more. We still have the niche tourism, but it's less than the mass tourism. And because they own property or manage property or lease property in Egypt. And some of them have their own buses, their own equipment, their own staff. So they are in the same
You're even
boat.
telling me their own bazaars.
Absolutely, and their own factory, alabaster factory on the West Bank in Luxor. So they leave nothing to the economy. Now that's on the bad side. Secondly, being too big, it means they can impose their pricing level. My friends hotelier can confirm this. Why? You will tell me, but they have their own properties. Yes. But now, 5 years ago, when they started what we call the low-cost carrier, before the big tour operator, they published on their website, where you could book, their hotels, their airlines, their buses, their tours. With the new concept of low-cost carrier, you know, the cheap carrier that flies scheduled, they had to change and reinvent themselves. Now they sell a seat, and they can sell you any hotel, which means they can go to the Kempinski, to the Marriott, and try to sell a room there, because they don't want to lose the client who is on the web now. So they try to find and they try to negotiate prices because they have their own properties. So that's on this side. Nevertheless, with time, we know there is a chain in our business. The chain starts from the client who goes to a travel agent. We call it Papa Mama because it's a small travel agent in the place where they live. And then they go to the wholesaler, and the wholesaler will go to us, will go to the airline, we go to the hotel traditionally, and then we go to the other suppliers. Now what happened with the event of the internet is that they try to reduce the chain, to reduce the profit in between. So you see, the tour operator now is selling online. So he's bypassing the small travel agents. And he is going directly to the hotels because this big chain, they don't want to wait for me any longer. They had big sales office, so they go overseas and they go to the tour operator. So you undercut me. And then, except for the niche market, I said, it still exists. And then sometimes in advanced country like France or England, they go straight to the bus company. They don't have to go to travel agent. Luckily, we are not that sophisticated yet in Egypt, so I can still survive in a while. But if we were sophisticated like UK, I would not be here. So I'm here because I can still make the small arrangements nobody else can do. So on the long run, to reduce the cost of the trip, because people are aware that they want to take more than one trip per year. They want to get value for money, and they want to cut all intermediate, hence tour operator will lose business and will have to reinvent themselves.
Isn't this leading to Egypt becoming a cheaper and cheaper destination? And also the purchasing power of the tourist that comes, the dollar spent in the country is basically non-existent now.
This, if I just give you a striking figure, in 1992, the average spending per tourist was $135 per night. $135. Today, according to the statistics of the Ministry of Tourism, it's $62 per day. What was the value of the dollar in 1992 versus the value or the purchasing power of the dollar today? So what you say is absolutely right. We are losing value, we are not gaining value. But again, ask yourself the question the other way. Why would the tourist come to Egypt now? He has all the negative images he sees on TV. The client. The only reason he comes, that's why we don't have the tourist who goes, the culture of tourism has been reduced tremendously. He comes because we have a sale, an opportunity, price. price is so cheap that he says, okay, instead of saying London, it's cheaper to fly to Cairo than to buy grocery. And I mean it. For the Poles, it's the same problem. For the Russians, it's the same. It is much cheaper to come to Egypt. So they don't know how long will the sale last. So that's why you have this affluence of clients. But if things were back to normal, then they will think twice. So we are in a corner. We have to survive with this. And this is why I said the industry is facing very, very serious problems. Yet, it's the most promising industry because we have been so resilient. And we have gone through times in the 90s when we had every 2 months a problem, an attack on tourists. It was even much more drastic, and still we survived. So after all what I have said, I'm trying to get some money from the government. So we will survive, and I promise you this.
Well, it seems to me that in order for the tourism industry to grow, and since it's basically one of the major contributors to the country's GDP, you will not reach a sustainable tourism industry growth without a shared vision by all the government that realized the importance of the industry and that reflected to the employees within their industry, within their ministries, and even within the educational system. So that's if we're going to talk about sustainable development for the tourism industry. And here will bring me to your role. We won't take it now, we'll talk about it later, so as to not infringe on somebody else's 10 minutes, but your role in the Constitutional Committee and placing this belief, if you will, in the Constitution in order for it to be shared by any government that will come. We'll come to that later, but Dr. Farouk, you said you have important messages from an investment perspective to those in charge of the tourism field, to the tourist industry and the investors in the tourism industry. We're very keen on knowing what this ingredient is.
Thank you, Ayman. Good afternoon, everybody. As this is the closing session, I'd like to reflect first on the conference, and I have really benefited a lot of being here. I'd like to thank the organizers, especially Ashraf and Nancy. As to our session, I'm an investment banker. I was asked first to come and talk on the financial session, but I am also an investor, and I'm involved in the tourism sector in investing and managing. And I feel that this is a sector in distress, and I'm a firm believer of tourism and of Egypt as a destination. So I wanted to be here with you to convey to you 3 messages. The first message is to investors. As I'm a believer of that sector, I'm telling investors I see opportunity. Opportunity on the private level. My dear colleague, Karim Hilal, is trying to help the sector as a government through a fund that can be maybe traded or something. No, I'm addressing investors directly, and I'm talking to them now. There is something like 164, correct me please, 164, he is the head of the federation, hotels that are about to close down now in Egypt. That, to me, as an investor, represents an opportunity, because many of them are over-leveraged, and for an investor to come in for full acquisition or to replace the debt by equity, as Mr. Hilal said, would be an excellent opportunity, because this is money that's going to be giving him return next year. If he invests in a greenfield, he has 3 years to go. This is an infrastructure that has taken a long time to build, 200 billion paid already. So to take advantage of that is a unique opportunity that we have to work on as investors. And that's my first message for investors. And I think I know what I'm talking about. My second message is for the government. The government has to, first of all, start from scratch building into our educational system the value of tourism and what it means to us as a country, so that they would help the young people grow thinking that tourism is the salvation for us. Tourism represents a big portion of our hard currency revenues and also provides labor. So this is very important. And also we have to change the way we look at universities. Universities now produce people from the tourism faculty that work mainly as secretaries or clerks or things like that. We don't have schools and universities like in Switzerland or like, say, Cornell Hospitality School that produce hospitality management, which is what we need. And that's why you can see our hospitality management are foreigners, both sides. So this is something also that we need to work on. I apologize, I forgot to shut down my... So the second is for the government, and then to concentrate on giving Egypt a facelift so that we transitionally go back to being that favored destination, not just a cheap destination. We are forced now to go to being a cheap destination because, as Mr. Alhami Zayat mentioned now, when people are forced to just operate 25 or 30% of the hotel, they'll accept anything. But when they are comfortable because they are not threatened by eroding their equity through the bank's debts, they can sustain this a little longer and stand firm on a decent level, because we have the best beaches, we have the best hotels. I recall Jacques Cousteau used to say, the Red Sea is the most colorful underwater in the world. You cannot compare it to anywhere else. So we have a huge infrastructure and we don't want to simply waste it. My third message is for the public. The public has to really understand the importance of supporting the tourism industry at large, because that's what generates jobs, that's what brings food at the table, that's what pays. You see, we import 70% of what we eat. Importing means hard currency, and the answer is tourism. And it's the only sector I see right now, not industry, not anything else, that can operate in 6 months, because the infrastructure is there and has been paid for. And thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess Rick has now a lot of material that he can plagiarize from, and Alexander as well.
There's a benefit to going forth, because you get to get some good ideas, but you also get to check off most of the things you wanted to talk about.
Let me just ask you, Rick,
before
you start. You've been here since 2009. You've witnessed what was before the 25th of January 2011, what was after the 25th of January 2011, and what we have reached today. From your perspective, what would you say is most needed in order to promote not only the hotellery business, but the tourism industry in large?
I don't think this will come as a surprise to anyone, but just an environment where people feel safe and secure, when you can go out and try to promote the destination with confidence that what you're telling a potential customer or a potential tour operator, that no, please, what you see on television, what you see on the media is overblown, it's really not that way, and at the same time things are happening which are concerning. So until we get to a kind of a stable playing field that's sustained 6 or 8 months, where some of the larger operators who will bring mass tourism feel confident that they can put out their brochures again and contract air and contract hotel rooms, Egypt is largely absent in most of the foreign trades. They're not promoting us because they've gotten burned several times over the last 3 years when they thought everything was okay, and situations boil up again. As I said, I don't think that's a surprise for anyone that's familiar with the industry. Something that might be not as obvious is there's been a lot going on in legislation around wages, around the service charge for the hotel workers and the tourism workers, which has been very fluid and has come about very rapidly. Most recent example would be the announcement of the minimum wage for public sector going up from 700 to 1,200 pounds. And while I don't think anybody is against raising the level of standard of living in the country, I think it's absolutely necessary. There needs to be some kind of legislative roadmap laid out so that investors know what they're getting into. That's going to keep people on the border. They're not going to jump in with both feet when they don't know, is the minimum wage going to go up 40% again next year and the year after? What are the rules? What are the rules on taxation? What are the rules on labor? Because very shortly we will start to raise our standard of living, and with that is going to come an expectation that our productivity, which has really never been measured in most of the hotels because it didn't matter, is going to become an issue. And when you're paying westernized wages, you're going to expect westernized productivity. And that's something that, again, it's not widely talked about, but it's a concerning trend that's coming, and it needs to come. But there really needs to be some kind of roadmap or plan of where we're going, so people know, at the beginning when they're getting ready to make that investment, what they're in for. Mentioned the media messaging, and we had talked about this yesterday. Unfortunately, I think that the media likes to look for the exciting story, and the exciting story is the demonstrations. It's the violence and the words like coup and words like demonstrations and protests. Rebuilding a country is a lot less exciting. You don't get airtime for stable elections and good governance. Nobody's going to cover that, unfortunately. So anytime we get uprisings or surprises, unfortunately that puts us in the first 3 minutes of every international newscast. And every time that happens, it really pushes back our recovery for another year. When you're talking about these mass tour operators, they're not going to really move until they feel like everything is okay. There was some discussion by Dr. Nasser about the investment community and government's role. And something that I would like to see is government actually taking the first step in making those investments. They're actually the owner of a lot of the assets. And them making a confident step and statement and saying, I'm reinvesting in my own businesses that will see the benefit of my investment when things recover. When foreign investors see the government putting their money where their mouth is, they'll have more confidence in making an investment in this country. And at the same time, there are some private investors that are doing investments. They have new properties in the pipeline. They're going to open, and a lot of the government-owned assets are not getting the funding that they need, and they will fall behind. So there is a real need for them to see that. I mean, essentially, they're paying themselves anyway. If it's coming from the Treasury into a government-owned asset, it's really just moving it around on the books. Another thought that I had is we do have, the governments in the GCC making I think a very large statement that they want to see this transition succeed. And one way that I think that they could help us almost immediately with an upcoming holiday is for them to, instead of giving us money here, actually subsidizing flights on the airlines that they own. Make it free for people from the GCC to come to Egypt. That doesn't make...
Saudi Arabia, Emirates,
yes, exactly.
Bahrain,
exactly.
Kuwait.
Make it free to come here. That way you're not putting the burden on the tour operators or the hotel operators that are already really suffering. They're really... I applaud anyone who is able to keep their business open for the last 3 years. It's been a really tremendously difficult task. So anyone that's managed to stay alive is going to get pressure from some of these foreign operators to give me a little bit better deal and maybe I'll be able to bring some business your way. And most of them, really, they're up to their noses in debt, in problems, and that one little extra dollar of profit for the foreign operator might be just enough to push them underwater. So, again, I think if the Saudis, the Kuwaitis, instead of maybe putting, or not instead of, but besides, in addition to doing what they're doing in the country and giving foreign currency reserves, subsidize the flights. Subsidize the flights. Get
the accommodation is
get
cheap,
GCC tourists here in 2 weeks.
Right. And maybe for Egyptian event organizers to organize some events and profit and
Exactly.
capitalize on trips from GCC countries. We'll get back. I think, Rick, you still have some points to
No, I think that's
cover?
the major thoughts that I had.
All right, super thoughts, and thank you very much, Rick. And now I go to Alexander, and the first thing that comes to my mind, you're here sitting, what was it, in Warsaw in 2012, and the officials in Kempinski came up to you and said, Alex, you've been promoted. You're moving to Cairo.
First of all, it was another brand, so that has nothing to do
It
with
was?
it. Yes.
It was what?
It was another hotel brand.
It was another hotel brand. Okay.
Exactly. Nonetheless, but the good thing is, and let me cut it down to short term and long term now, a couple of points that I want to mention. In short term, of course, the roadmap or the action plan in terms of the Ministry of Tourism.
No, but let me ask you something. When you were posted to Egypt in Kempinski and you accepted, what is it that you said to yourself in this transitional phase, I'm going to Kempinski, what is it that you wanted to achieve in this country?
There's of course a personal career movement that you
Other
do.
than the personal, let's talk professional.
I knew the country was beautiful, and when I was here in August 2012, when I arrived on the 15th, it looked that everything would become a little bit more stable. So even as a foreigner, the whole political situation, the only thing you see is what's on the news at the end. So it got, let's say the news got less and less bad, and you saw an opportunity. It was positive, so the drive would only go from then already bad to better, where of course it has been proven the other way around. So now we're in a worse
Temporarily.
situation. Yes, exactly. We're in a worse situation now, and we need to get back up to it as fast as possible. So in terms of long and short term, to get back up to the level Egypt and Cairo has to be. In short term, indeed, so the roadmap is there. But on long term, and there's one point that I want to really stress on, is the diversity of business we have into Egypt. So currently the only thing I hear is tourism, tour operators, wholesaler tourism. In a lot of other destinations, let me just name one, Dubai, it's not all about tourism. I think only 20 or 30% is tourism. All the rest is congresses, events, incentives, companies who come here as an incentive with their whole worldwide team. This is exactly, and I think this is one of the crucial things where Egypt and Cairo has to work on a longer term. Because then you're not depending on one single segment. And now it has been proven, the country was depending on one segment, which is tour operators and leisure. They are all gone. So that means hotels are driving 5 to 10% occupancy because there's nothing left. Of course, with the situation that is now in hand, those other segments would not come neither, but one would pick up faster than the other one. So in terms of finance and money then, investing, I would say the Egyptian government, if they invest in infrastructure, they will be able to host a bigger amount of congresses into Cairo, for instance. You have a beautiful exhibition center, you have beautiful hotels who can accommodate everybody, but we're missing those huge congresses of 4 to 5 to 10,000 people during a whole week who fill up every single hotel. Since the last 4 years, I think there was not one single blackout date in the hotels. 2005, exactly. So, and this what needs to be gained back. If this is gained back, this diversity of segments. MICE, the meetings, events, congresses is just one. Another one could be entertainment or sports. I remember the Harlem Globetrotters coming to Cairo, and they only had 1,000 people, local people. That's all fine. At the end, they came. But you have every month or every week, you can have a sports event, an international sports event, or an entertainment event happening in Cairo or anywhere in Egypt, which attracts another segment of people staying into hotels, spending money into Egypt. Entertainment is, for instance, I say concerts. If you go to, I just mentioned again Dubai, but I lived in Amsterdam as well. But in Amsterdam, every single week, there's at least 4 to 5 concerts of international artists. That means you have another 5 to 10,000 to 20,000 people who are traveling through Egypt to attend this concert. But you have also a crew of 200 people of this international star who's staying in hotels. So there's plenty of different segments that I think Egypt needs to focus on as well, and not only on leisure and tour operators. I mean, we have all the experts here. It's been the key segment in all the years. If you have this diversity, if something happens, Egypt will be much more resilient to the situation we have right now. This is just one point of view. And a second one is, of course, the destination management of the country. Again, and it's all about selling, of course. With what kind of message do we go as hoteliers? Do we go out abroad and sell Egypt again? And I think Egypt can improve itself in terms of what this message is, and assuring that the message is shared with every single person in the hospitality industry, that we all have the same message. And then linked to this, of course, is the people itself. So if you go to a restaurant and everybody is smiling as a foreigner, you love the country. And I must say one final thing. I've been now in 12 different countries, all over the continents, different continents, and I must say I have the nicest team I have ever had, just because the people are so nice in Egypt as such. So Egypt has every single tool to only do better, so yeah, I think it will only get better from now on.
Thank you very much, Alex. Certainly, those points, all the points that have been mentioned, fall into your lap when you're sitting there in the Senate discussing the amendment of the Egyptian constitution and putting the tourism industry as an industry in the Egyptian constitution. And it also falls into your lap for a very simple reason. When Alex was talking about incentive tourism, I remember growing up when I was in university and seeing your buses in the streets, the Emeco buses in the streets, and say, that company deals in incentive tourism. This is the Egyptian company that deals in incentive tourism. So basically this is something that you spent your whole life working on and probably supporting. Go ahead. And we'll open up the floor after this comment, so if anybody has a question, please prepare it, say your name and your affiliation, and we'll start from there. Mr. Elhemi.
I'm pleased that you mentioned incentive and congresses, because this is my baby. This is how I started my company and how I introduced this business in Egypt. And it has an added value in terms of revenue also. We have to say this is the most expensive sort of tourism. And I recall in 1987, remember the date, I had a dinner here in this ballroom for Pepsi Cola. how much they charge per person, the Marriott Hotel. 1987. Do you know? $320 per person. Plus a cocktail, 20 minutes, $55. So it was, we converted this room into a jungle because I had the Pepsi Cola from the African countries. So a theme party. So at the conferences we had, when we had ICPD, which was the International Congress for Population and Development, I had 16,500 people in Egypt. But it takes time to prepare this. I mean, I can't go tomorrow, press on a button and say, even though I have the contacts, because it's been 40 years, I'm in this specific field, I can't press the button and get these people here. But thank you, Alex. I mean, this is, hopefully, I hope I can still do this in a couple of years or 1 year. We are still doing, in a timid way, in Luxor, we do events, we are doing, but we have to get back to gain the confidence. The confidence will be gained by stability. And we have to wait. And as Rick said, it will take some time. I mean, I know of the big tour operator we met in Luxor Saturday. They said, okay, instead of 15 flights a week to Sharm, they will start with 2. And by the 14th of February, they will increase them to 4, which is not a big deal. But it's better than nothing. But I'm quoting this figure because these are important. Now, we are not sitting idle. We are conducting a huge PR campaign. I'm drafting the terms of reference with the UN WTO on the 10th of this month, and we'll tender to 26 international companies to conduct a PR campaign in the US, Canada, one side, Europe, which is the UK, Germany, France, and Italy. We can't cover the whole world. Russia separately, China, and the GCC. So we have different themes in each one, and maybe one company will have more than one region to cover. Now, coming to the new constitution, and I said new constitution, because the majority, there is almost a consensus that we are not talking about just an amendment, because an amendment, it means I'll have to go to the people and say we amended law number so, article so and so, and this is the new amendment, which it's too complicated for the people to understand.
I'm trying to be as official as possible.
No, okay, no, I tell you the general feeling in the 50s, and with their substitute it makes 100, with very few exceptions. I said very few exceptions. There is almost a consensus that it is, as a matter of fact, a new constitution, because we are reviewing all articles. All articles are reviewed with more or less success, but many of them with big success, so we are good. At the role of tourism, I had big arguments because I'm sitting in this room where we talk about few different things. One of them is religion, and that's the most complex part, because we have Al-Azhar, we have the Mufti, we have the 3 churches, and we have the Salafist, and we have also the leftists. So it's very enjoyable as a discussion, because everyone has his point of view. But I believe we still are pending on 3 articles, 2, 4, and 7, and I believe this will be sorted out because we have an excellent chairman. Amr Musa knows exactly how to handle such difficult situation, and I think we'll sort it out. Concerning tourism and the economy, I had my input because some people wanted to have incremental taxes on corporate profits. I said, no way. I brought them the whole world. You put incremental taxes on personal revenue. If you pay dividends, then you can have incremental taxes. I don't disagree. But on corporate, you have to make a proper feasibility study. You have to have something to work with, a plan. To the contrary, China tells you, or Chile, if you reinvest your profits, then you can deduct the taxes, which is more clever, but don't put an additional tax if you achieve more profit. We are discussing all the articles. Now, our session is almost completed, so we are attending the other, like the parliament, how it will work, the presidency and all the rest, and how to put a lot of constraints so that each one is supervised by another authority. I don't want to be too long. On the PR campaign, we are trying to do things out of the normal. On the 8th of November in London, we are recognizing Sir Alan Gardiner. He is one of the most famous Egyptologists in the world because he's the one who wrote the ancient Egyptian grammar, and it's his 50th death anniversary. So we are going to celebrate this in the British Museum. We are looking for ideas, creative, and we are going to invite people, maybe Tony Blair, people that the media is going to talk about, and invite them to visit sites where they are excavating, where they are restoring temples, and where many people are working, and we'll show them the new Egyptian museum under construction because it's something outstanding, and if you go and see the site, you will see how impressive it is. It is something out of this world when completed in 2015. Yes? I didn't know it was a Belgian company. So the Belgians know how to do things. Good.
Okay, let's start with questions from the floor. We have a question, the gentleman here who has his schedule raised.
I've been intrigued by all the information.
It's working.
It works? Good. I've been intrigued by all the number of initiatives that I've heard in the last half hour, particularly because tourism has been the subject of discussions in this August forum in many past events. And I still remember about a year ago in another GTM event somebody saying, a tourist comes to Egypt once because you can see the pyramids only once, and then they need another holiday to recover from the traffic, the lousy service, and the petty thievery. And that really means that there are other problems we have not spoken about. Karim's initiative, clearly the engineering on the balance sheet will take quite a lot of pressure off the profit and loss account, which is where the profits in the end are created. Rick spoke about the security as an element, both in terms of personal safety, as perceived by tourists, but also in the legislative developments, that you need to know where you stand as an organization. You also alluded to productivity that has to go up, and that really is the question that has been raised here in previous occasions. So my question really is, are there at the country, at the national level, initiatives that will, despite the 15 years that it takes to train somebody, that was a bit of a shocker, have an immediate impact on the bottom line of tourism operators?
All right, you didn't identify yourself and who your question is addressed to.
My name is Eric Zutmuller. I'm Dutch. I've lived in Egypt for quite a number of times. I'm a management consultant, so doctoring sick companies is what I do for a living. And I'm trying, listening to all of you, to formulate the pharmacy prescription that I can give to other companies in the sector.
Okay, and your question is addressed to somebody in specific? All right. Ilhami, I think you need to answer that because you're going to leave us in a minute.
Well, the biggest challenge is to change the image, how people perceive Egypt. Because, as I earlier explained, the tour operator, the big one, they have major investments here. So some of them have 40 hotels here. So they have a vested interest in bringing people. Our mutual concern is how to diffuse a different image of the one they are used to see, the guy sitting next to the TV. So this is why we are having many initiatives, and for each country we have a different initiative. In Russia we will have a big dinner in the Kremlin, attended by the public with Egyptian show. For the Arabs, we are going to tour the Gulf states with a show, and we have all the artists from Egypt volunteer. We are going to have the cinema in Luxor very soon, the festival. We will maintain it, and we'll try to, with the Ministry of Tourism, to pay money to get the proper artists to come to Luxor, because if you get the second class or third class, nobody will say anything. So we are trying to create events that people will talk about. That's the most important thing. And if anyone has an idea, please send it over, because we are looking for ideas, we are analyzing. I send a lot of ideas to my colleague And today they are analyzing them, so we'll see the results.
Alex, you want to
Yeah,
say
I
something?
just wanna-
Ilhami is asking you kindly to be excused because he has another engagement. We thank you very much for being with us. Alex, would you like to...
Yeah, I just want to say that I completely agree with this strategy. Indeed, it's very simple actually. You just need to delete the imprint of somebody wanting to travel about the negativity about Egypt and print something else in there. So if it's now done with a very positive news or activity or destination management information about Egypt, it will make a big difference already. Absolutely.
All right, we have a question, the lady over there.
أنا ليا سؤالين.
لو تت...
I have two questions. Please introduce yourself and introduce your addressee about the question. My name is Suhair Mitri. I'm from the Ministry of Industry and Trade. I'm a general manager. I have an opinion. We have been for years. The archaeological areas, archaeological places are still the same. We haven't introduced new areas. Even the Egyptians do not know a new area that should be cherished and brought to the limelight, Al-Wadi al-Gadid or the New Valley. So why wouldn't we place the New Valley area on our touristic map and to develop the infrastructure and the flights and activities? The second point, all over the world, they are concerned with the rankings of the hotels. There are 5 stars, 2, 3 stars to even 1 stars, and all of the hotels are highly clean and highly capable. In Egypt, on the other hand, the big hotels, the major hotels, and which have many rooms, we have many hotels and many rooms, and nevertheless we can't attract a significant number of the world travelers. Yes, it's true that those who come spend $130 or something a night, and that's it. But when we bring 5 travelers in the smaller hotels, they will spend and the flights will work and there will be...
We add new destinations instead of the traditional historical destinations, such as adding the new valley and preparing it for the tourists to come and visit it. And the other thing is the categorization of hotels, that we only take care of the 5-star hotels in its cleanliness and the services provided, whereas the 1-star, 2-star, 3-star are not available, they're not clean, so we're not attracting the tourists that would target such categorization. Who would like to, Rick, let's start with you.
I mean, there's been a initiative that's, I think maybe it's 6 or 7 years old. It predates my time here, with the new norms for all of the categorization of the hotels and criteria for what it takes, what you have to have, what services you need to provide to be a 1-star, a 2-star, a 3-star, etc. And the implementation of those norms has been delayed repeatedly, understandably, because some investments are required, some trainings are required, etc. My understanding is that the norms will be enacted as of the end of this year. And it does really kind of outline what is required. Obviously, you know, it's hard for people to make investments. And the other challenge that has been going on today is, because business has been so bad, you have people that may be in 4 or 3-star category that have gravitated their prices down lower just to try to grab some business. So there's a big blending of the rates that would typically be appropriate for certain star category hotels. They've been reduced as people are just really desperate to grab any kind of business that's out there.
Coming back to the point of the new destinations and the new, I'm a little bit, I'm not sure if this is the right strategy there, because the things that you have already in Egypt are amazing, are incredible. You don't have these in Belgium. I have an Aptonium with 9 ugly aluminium balls, and this is the highlight of the country. So you have amazing things. I don't think building something new will suddenly attract new revenue streams. What you have right now, maintain it, build around it, and this is the key thing what you need to do, because the people at the end, I mean, before I came to Egypt, I was never at the pyramid, so, I mean, and I will come back if I'm out of the country in a couple of years, I will come back to see them again with friends. So I don't need to see another pair of pyramids to come to Egypt. One is enough, so I think.
Even a little small one is enough in any way.
Thank you. أنا هجاوب بحضرتك بالعربي.
I will answer you in Arabic. The first part is related to the new archaeological site. This is the responsibility of the government, and I will make sure to deliver the question to His Excellency Minister of Tourism. I think the part related to hotels have been already answered by the hotel specialists.
Proposal of thinking or initiative of proposing to the Emirates as a gesture to send their people for free, especially for the feast. I have actually made that request to the Emirates and to Egypt there. And if my colleagues on the panel would agree, would like this to be a request or an appeal from us.
Well, actually, he's not saying for free. He's saying for their governments to subsidize their trips.
I have requested, actually my request to them was to make it 50% for that period. Just as an initiative. How they do it is up to them as the governments, but it's a nice appeal, it's a nice idea. Thank you.
I love the idea, but I'm just against the concept of just coming for the sake of supporting. We have to provide an attraction. We have to prepare something to be an attraction. Do we have other questions from the floor? The gentleman here has a question, and then it's you, sir. Name, affiliation, and the person you're addressing the question to.
Good afternoon. My name is Tariq Salama. I am an investment and asset management consultant in hotel properties specifically. I'm a bit surprised the panel is talking about operating and higher efficiency of hotels and tourism generally. And I was waiting for more about the investor. What are the problems of the investor in Egypt? And I think that the problem of investor in Egypt are long before the revolution. First of all is the ownership framework. Because most of the world now, the ownership of hotels is through funds, real estate funds. And in Egypt, the mobility of the investor is nearly within very limited. It's very difficult to buy or sell a property, and this is part of the investor. Secondly, the cannibalizing, every new property is built, you're selling land, and you have to understand there's 250,000 hotel rooms that should open within the next couple of years, and this will kill again the industry. So it's about time to have a kind of moratorium in selling land. So my question is addressed to Dr. Farouk about why you have a problem in finance, cannot finance hotels short terms, something that needs to be financed long term. And Dr. Karim Hilal is about the why not pushing the government to create special funds, real estate funds, that would encourage the people, especially foreign investors, to come and be able to buy a hotel in one day and sell it in one day through such funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Farouk, then Karim.
Thank you very much for your question. It's a very important question, of course. For the first part, well, buying and selling property is only difficult in Sinai because of the late restrictions on foreigners. However, the rest of the country, Hurghada and the other parts of Egypt, most of these you're not buying and selling properties. These are companies and you're really trading and buying stocks. So the acquisition goes through buying an existing company. You're not buying a building. So that's easy. The real problem, in my opinion, and because you are in that field, is that most of these people that started, as you said, internationally, the ownership is through funds. That means people that understand finance. By and large, approximately 60 to 70% of the ownership of hotels are owned by people that do not have a proper financial background. And most of them were over-leveraged. And most of them fell in the problems of hard currency hedging and so financing any project that has a good feasibility study within the reasonable limits is available. Reasonable limits meaning an acceptable equity debt ratio is still available, and we can discuss that. Thank you. That's the word to Mike.
Thank you. Just to add, the investment, the challenges facing investment in general, yes, of course, they've existed before the revolution, and they continue to exist. But over the last few days, couple of days, a lot of these issues were addressed by different panels, so we don't need to go into that. But yes, there is a problem, has to be dealt with. The specific point you raised, we have put forward, when I say we, I mean stakeholders within the financial and capital market. We have put forward several proposals to the Egyptian Financial Authority to introduce REITs, real estate funds, closed, open-ended, you name it. And it hasn't happened yet for a variety of reasons over the last 3 years, but what I can tell you, the proposal is on the table, needs to be done, has to be done, and because it has to be done, it will be done.
Thank you, Karim. I think we have a question here, the gentleman.
No. As Dr. Farouk said, there is no issue on land ownership other than Sinai. But if you...
That's not new, by the way. This is something that's an old regulation.
It's been there for a while. But if you have a real estate fund that will invest in income-producing assets, of which hotels is one, they will buy the companies. It will be in the form of a company, typically. And that... Excuse me, yes? Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Yes. No, you're absolutely right. There is no defense for it. There needs to be a long-term view and preserving the inventory, if you will.
All right.
Right. Dr. Hani Al-Hafnawi, I'm a strategic management module leader at the British University in Egypt. I'm glad to see Mr. Ziola talk about the productivity, which is the main issue in Egypt, in fact, not only in that sector, but in every other sector as well. Our productivity is extremely low, and that's why we have very high inflation and so on. And I would like to have that reflected, obviously, in the Constitution, but Mr. Elhami left already. But I mean, it's very funny that we have a lot of management issues that's very unique to Egypt. I mean, like 35 ministers in the cabinet. If you check the number of ministers in the States, which is about 65 times our size of economy, they are 14. Again, Japan, they are 14. But here we have 35. So it's impossible to, really have a span of control. I mean, that's the reverse
That's
of
because
control.
of the history, sir. We've been here for over 7,000
Right.
years.
But I mean, we need to do, that's why we have these separate islands of information and so on, and we need to integrate all that into one thing together so that everybody can start pulling in one direction. We don't have anything to do with strategic management at all. Even the number of, a committee for the defense and for disasters and so on in the Constitution, they are insisting on being 15 numbers. I'm not sure. I mean, it could be 5. Everywhere else in the whole world, it's about 5 to 7, except in Egypt. So all management principles here are completely, destroyed.
So your question is?
My question is, how can that be reflected? I mean, if you can transfer that message to Mr. Elhami Zayat and to get it into the Constitution, because, I mean, at the moment, even, the Shura Council that they are thinking about reestablishing it again, they don't have any function for it. At least they can review the CVs of the new ministers, for example, like what the Congress does, what the Senate does in the US. So there's a lot of issues about management. It's, really we are 30 years behind in management issues. And, if we can get 1 or 2 items at least in the Constitution, that will solve a lot of our problems.
Well, maybe the recommendation for the Constitutional Committee would be to get management consultants like yourself and have a committee to discuss these issues in the drafting process, if you will. Okay, so that's a very valuable contribution here. Do we have any questions from the floor? If not, I think I will take the opportunity to be ahead of time, to close this session, to thank the participants for being with us. And I'll start with Alexander Suski, the Area Director of Sales in Egypt for Kempinski Hotels. Dr. Farouk Nasser, the Chairman and Managing Director of Mena Tours. Mr. Karim Hilal, the Advisor to the Minister of Tourism. And Rick Ziola, the General Manager of the Cairo Marriott Hotel. Thank you very much. Thank you for bearing with us until the end of this session. It was a pleasure, and congratulations to the organizers for a wonderful conference.